And welcome everybody to the Bangers and Classics podcast. That's with me, James Rupert, and him, David Malloy. And what have you been up to, David?
Crikey. Good question. I'm not quite sure of the answer to that one. But what I would say to listeners is we may get some interruptions today because a certain group of car enthusiasts have passed out the phone number for Bangers and Classics headquarters to other disgruntled parties. And guess who's manning the phones today? Yes, it's James.
Goodness me.
It's not enough that he's just back from the Hammer Horror Actresses Home, but he's now got to man the phones as well.
Goodness me.
I say we got some feedback on this week's podcast, James. Was from Matthew Corrigan.
Yeah.
And he thought it would be interesting to have Mr. Ed with the horse replaced by a Honda Express.
Yeah.
It's quite close to the pole darkened mopeds concept.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we're always welcome to suggestions from Matthew.
Yes, of course.
And as it happens, I used to work with a chap who was known as Mr. Ed, but he was more of a talking horse's arse. I wasn't that fond, if I'm honest. Anyway, car spots. What can we talk about? Well, basically, I'm blowed if I can remember what I saw this week. I saw a yellow Smart Roadster, and I think that's about it.
All right.
Yeah. I have been out and about, just not really been looking or not observing cars. It's quite sad, really.
That's dreadful. It's a nightmare.
On the other hand, Yeah, of course. On the other hand, we just recorded the last episode on Monday, so there's not been much of a gap between episodes for me to be out and see things. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, you can do.
But I know you've got lots and lots of things in your sightings bank, so let's be having it, Gov.
Well, I haven't really, David, because I think I splurged them all the last time. What I did see, actually, which was quite remarkable, was a Peugeot 504 pickup.
Oh, that is remarkable.
I cannot ever remember seeing one of those at all. And again, it's one of those that it looked as though it was being used. Well done to whoever had that. So that was quite incredible. But no, I'm going to be exposed to so many classics and bikes and tractors and all sorts in the coming days that I will be able to bore you for a whole episode with what I may have saw from the ice cream selling lorry. So I'm saving that all up. Apart from that, actually, I was watching Return of the Saints the other evening, and I saw an Innocenti. They were actually in Rome. And in the distance, there was an Innocenti flicked.
Now, what kind of Innocenti was it? Was it the kind like you've got, the hatchback, or the mini?
It's the kind that I've got. I mean, there were probably I did see minis as well, so they were probably Innocentis. But it was nice to see one shaped the same as mine, so I quite enjoyed that. But it was a distant shot, but it was in frame for a while as it flitted across the screen. I don't think it was part of the. Part of the crew. I don't think it was an extra Innocenti as such, but it was just nice to see that. So, and that's it really. But yeah, otherwise I've got loads of stuff saved up for.
I mean, I take it you didn't see a Regent in the programme.
No, I didn't see a Regent. Not even a Prince Regent.
Do they actually sell any Regents in Italy? The Innocenti mark. In case you're wondering, listeners, Innocenti Regent is, of course, the Austin Allegro, very slightly disguised by British Leon's arm in Italy, which was in Innocenti, and it sold spectacularly badly.
Yeah, that's right. I think Richard Brenner's got one in his collection of stuff. So there is one. I think there's a few over here, but not very many.
Is that the guy who does impressions?
Yeah, that's it.
Right, I thought so.
But but apart from that, no, it's a car that you really won't see very often at all. And probably quite rightly.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested in seeing one, I have to say. Anyway, on to Banger Classic.
All right.
And we're going to start off with the Ford Ka. Now, some people call it the Ford KA, including my collaboration on a couple of books with Russ Wallace, who's got one. But Russ, I can understand why you do it, but KA sounds like a postcode, and in fact, it is a postcode. It's a postcode for the area in which I live, for all of Ayrshire.
Yeah, it is, absolutely, because we actually charge more to send to the KA region. Certain parts require extra payment for postage because you're so remote, David. In the KA region.
First I've heard of it, Chief, but there we go.
Really? No.
This is essentially the universe, James. You didn't know that. We should be charging you for the privilege of sending things here.
Well, there you go.
It's not a remote area. It's
No,
about
it's not. Oh,
no,
okay.
no. It's about 30 miles
Yeah.
south of Glasgow. Which would be better if it was 31. Some might say, but
Yeah.
we're not going to go there anyway. The Ford Ka, because that's apparently the official pronunciation,
Mm.
and I've always viewed it as Ford's first contribution to adult illiteracy.
Mm.
Don't like that. I've got to be honest. Mocha, Mokaa, and Kuga, Kuga.
Mm.
It's infantile. Stop
Mm.
it. Stop it at once. They've been told now, so that's it. It's
Oh,
problem
okay.
sorted. But anyway, came out in 1996, as we all know.
Yeah.
And, well, what can you say about it? Dear Lord, it was ugly. That's what I would say about it. Front wheel drive. It was a single model, I think, only available in the UK at launch. Then there was a dealer option called the Ka2. The engine was a 1.3 litre. That's all you could get, petrol engine, with an overhead valve architecture. So it was quite a venerable architecture, even in 1996 when it was launched. But it did handle and drive well enough. And it was followed into production by the SportKA and the StreetKA. The SportKA had an ad ban for depicting animal cruelty. StreetKA, I knew somebody had one. That's all I'll say about it. So, my view, James,
Yeah.
well, we'll come to that. Let's find out your view.
It's a classic, David. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all, really. And anybody who sheds any doubt on that, I would question their sanity.
Oh, I'm not
And
worried about
maybe
that.
their postcode. I thought it was quite a cute little thing. I was a very sort of brave design, to do. I know it's a sort of a tiny bit of a jelly mold thing, but I thought it was extremely brave. It was a very good car to drive. Yes, it did have a very old engine, which I think you can find in Anglia's from way back. But it was a good first car. A lot of people had that as their first cars and learning to drive cars. It was a car that people bought for their offspring as a first car. There was an exploding thing in the what do you call that? I can't remember now. Hold on.
Oh, was that the Ford Cat Owners Club on the phone
It
already to
was.
complain about me?
I'm afraid. Well, they were singing my praises. Strangely enough, they were saying that I was fighting their corner rather well. Uh,
They
so,
really are deluded, aren't they?
well, no, I wouldn't say that. No, absolutely. So, no, I thought it was a great little car. Very slow but fun to drive. If you enjoy driving, it's actually quite a good, sort of experience to have. It's very sporty. But not fast. And actually, for a first car, that's the sort of thing that you want. You want something that's a bit fun to drive, but isn't necessarily going to kill you. There's an airbag in the front which might save your life. I don't know, or stop you being very badly injured. So the only downside to these little things was I think Rust came and got them and claimed them. Uh, but
Yay!
but no, a sensational little car, really. And to me, it's the most significant sort of small car after the Mini, really. I think the Mini obviously was a move in the right direction. And then we had the full car. And I can't think of very much in between that was very interesting, although you can probably think of something French, David. But
Oh, lots of cars, yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, you're just being controversial just for the sake of it, James.
Am I?
You're being contrary just for the
Oh,
sake
I
of it.
don't know.
Of course you are. I mean, let's be honest. Ridiculous name, ridiculous looks. Yes, it drove well. And then, of course, there was that ad I mentioned, which I found really offensive and really think the people responsible for it should be damn well ashamed of themselves. And I mean, sorry, Russ, I know you love your car or your KA as you call it, but I just can't get on board with that at all. For me, banger. And if that means I'm certifiable or whatever, I don't care. Or with a dodgy postcode, still don't care. It's unrepentant. So, that's one of us thinks it's a banger, one of us thinks it's a classic. Tell us what you think. We're always interested to hear what listeners to the podcast think. So, yeah, go onto the Twitter page and let us know what you think. Anyway, so that's that. I think we shall move on now. And what are we going to do next, James? I mean, can we find something we agree on? No, I don't know that we will, because we're going to go back to the past.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you already live in the past.
Yeah, well, I do, absolutely.
And I've been accused of it, especially by my wife. But Back to the Future's been done, and I reckon it was high time that loads of us at Bangers and Classics fitted our patented time machine into a car. The question is, of course, James, which car? Because we can't use the DeLorean. That's been done. Now, I had a quick think about this, and we'll come to your views in a second, but I thought, well, not a Triumph Stag, because it's got to be reliable. If we're going somewhere, like, the 9th century, we've got to get back down again. We've got to get back home again.
Yeah.
Not a Ford Cat, obviously. And not an MX-5, just in case people thought it was a skip on wheels, and so on. So, I've got a choice, but I want to hear yours first.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right. Is there a dog in the vicinity, David?
Yes?
Oh, it's all right now because I presume he's wagging his tail because I can hear a thump thump thump.
No.
Okay. All
Don't know
right.
what that is. No, there was a dog. She's lying down at the moment, looking towards the hallway.
Okay. All right. It's just that
No,
there's a noise on it which will annoy some listeners. Like it's going thump thump thump, but it's
no, it's dead. It's dead quiet at this end.
all right. Okay.
Oh, strange.
Yeah.
It's the
Don't worry about
software
it.
again. It's the software again, I reckon.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had
Well,
this a
don't.
few times.
Okay. All right. Well, don't worry about it. Well, David, when it comes to time travel, I do know rather a lot about it. I do apologise for that, and I do know a bit about the space-time continuum and getting into time portals. And actually, it's sort of quite precise. Really, is that you can't take a car with you which is too large. I'm going to write all this down in a book. I might have to turn it into a novel because if it because you see the thing is if it was uh, obviously I know all the facts and all the story behind it, but I think it could sort of frighten the world really that it is possible to travel forwards and backwards, but you actually need a fairly small form of transport to travel backwards and forwards. You also need something that can basically run on anything at all, because sometimes when you go back in time, there isn't there aren't petrol stations, and so you just have to sort of get sort of oil or whatever. That you actually can, sometimes some of that oil they pour over the turrets, when people attack, is perfectly fine if you put it into a two-stroke engine. So the only vehicle really that one can take, and it's not a vehicle I particularly like, is the Trabant.
Oh,
So yeah, absolutely, it's small enough to go into the portal. The Duraplast sort of faux fiberglass sort of travels quite well. That sort of takes it all the way. And obviously, you've got a two-stroke engine that you can put just about anything in, and it will run. It will run dreadfully and smokily and awfully, but it will get you about. Especially, if you have to, you've got distances to travel when you've gone through time. But there you go. That's the official view, anyway.
right. Okay, well, I mean, there's a better choice of engine than that, of
Is
course.
there?
Yeah, gas turbine. You can run
Oh,
it. You can run it in peanut oil, Chanel number
yeah,
5, beer,
yeah,
you name it. You can run it in just about any liquid.
yeah. I
Well,
know
not
that.
water, sadly, but yeah, you can run it in a lot of things.
Mm,
But the car I went for doesn't have a gas turbine engine.
no.
It could have,
Mm,
but I thought, well, I wanted a car that if I went to the past, particularly in the last century, people would just look at it and understand straight away. And if I went to the future, they would just think, well, it's just newly been released. And that narrowed the choice down. It had to be a Citroen CX. So if you go back to 1930, especially to Paris somewhere, people look at it and say, it's a Citroen, yes, they're completely off around the bend.
mm.
I come up with this now. No surprises, that's it. And if you go to the future, it'll just look as if it's been released. So there you go, Citroen CX. But I went further than that, James.
Oh, really?
I actually found one.
Mm.
Yeah. I had to go beyond the brief on this one because I found one we can buy.
Oh, good.
It's in Edinburgh. So, the other side of the coast from me. But, I dare say I can probably sneak in there without, past the border guards, etc.
Mm.
It's a CX Turbo 2. It's advertised in Car and Classic. It's just a metallic russet colour. Not rust, russet. It's got a current MOT to October. It's covered 90,000 miles. There's nothing worrying in the MOT history. It's got a private plate on it, but we'd have to change it for a Bangers and Classics plate, obviously. It's in great condition. Only criticism I've got of it is the original alloys aren't fitted to the car. They do come
Mm.
with it, though. They just need
All
a
right.
refurb, so we'd have to deal with that, because obviously the original alloys look great on the CX Turbo.
Yeah.
So there you have it, James. I think that's the perfect car to go back in time. We can't shrink it, but I think we can probably widen the portal enough to get that through.
Mm.
And we can do it in great leisure. I mean, it'll waft around everywhere. It's got enough performance. Yeah, probably fly if you stuck a pair of wings on it.
Yeah.
So there we have it. It's a Trabant or a CX. Oh, that's a tough decision for me.
It is very tough, but unfortunately, David, yours won't get through the portal. It'll get stuck. It'll be
It's
very nicely stuck, but I'm really sorry about that. I mean, I'm sure it'd be far more comfortable and stylish. But
no. See, James, Citroen's designers envisaged this, so of course we'll go through the portal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course, because we're completely ahead of their time.
Mm.
Barking mad, quirky, idiosyncratic, whatever you want to call them.
Mm.
But they thought of this, and their knowledge of physics is second to none.
Yeah.
Well, apart from maybe Nikola Tesla, but of course, Nikola Tesla probably had a hand in the design at some stage anyway.
We could have done.
Yeah, probably some part of the past. So anyway, there we go. That's this week's car. Well, it's not this week's car. That's our choice of cars. Again, if you think you can get with a better idea for a car to take back to the past, or indeed head off to the future in, do tell us. And on that note, we'll take a break. Coming soon to a podcast near you, it's the much anticipated Bangers and Classic Awards. We're back after the break, and we're going to talk about this week's Dangermobile. And this week's Dangermobile is the invalid car. There was more than one manufacturer, and the last several hundred, probably a couple of thousand invalid carriages were all made to design by none other than, guess who? EC. Yeah, the same EC who made the Cobra. If you don't know what an invalid carriage is, you're probably a bit younger than us. You used to see a lot of them in the roads, were all painted babyish sort of blue. They were trikes that held one person, and that person had to be disabled, and they were given an invalid car which was made of fiberglass. James will tell us more about that because James remembers them well, I'm sure.
Used to see them everywhere, really. You always associated them with people who were injured in the war, really, because that's what was always your first thought. You just thought, there's an old boy in that. I'm sure he was in the Second World War. So, they did do a job. They were there to help mobility. I suppose they could have been better, really, because I think, wasn't it, their demise was brought about by Stirling Moss, wasn't it? Didn't Stirling Moss drive one and said they were very unsafe and very, not at all good? And I thought that sort of led to their demise, effectively. You might know more about the history.
Not really. I mean, he may have been part of it. The best known company was Invercar, and it came about because Bert Greaves had a cousin who only adjusted his right arm, and basically Greaves adapted this guy's wheelchair by powering it with a lawnmower engine. Then he built an invalid trike, the 125cc engine, and the control system he could operate it with just one hand. They then set up a company to build the trike, and with the NHS being created in 1949, the idea was, we could buy these and give them to disabled people. And that's what happened. I think it was the Ministry of Supply, and the Ministry of Health, rather, supplied trikes free of charge to eligible persons. And they took care of the maintenance and insurance. The trikes were never owned by a disabled person, they were always owned by the government. Only severely disabled war veterans or war pensioners could get an adapted car with 2 seats, but the majority of disabled people could only get a single-seater trike. And the argument was, trikes were cheaper, and the cost was a significant consideration because the war had virtually bankrupted the country. Another reason to dislike wars, along with every other reason you can think of. Anyway, time passes and EC enter the market as well, and other companies were supplying them too. There was a standard specification, which evolved over time, and by 1967, there was about 17,500 invalid trikes on UK roads. Doesn't sound like a lot, but they really were a common sight. The last batch of them from 1971 was based on an AC design called the Model 70. And the specification was the old fiberglass bodies, twin sliding doors, and they'd remounted 493cc steer-push engines. But the last one said variable belt drive transmission. And guess what, James? You could drive it as quickly backwards as you could forwards, in theory.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and they were quite intelligently designed cars in many ways, because depending on disability, they catered for that. Steering was either by a wheel, handlebars, or a tiller, and there was something like 56 different control configurations were available, and that helped cater for the needs of the individual user. So some thought I'd get into these things. They weren't just cobbled together and thrown together and say that's good enough. And many of the people who had invalid trikes loved them. I think the strength of feeling for them at the time was perhaps underestimated. typical government. Oh well, the terrible things, we have to get rid of them. They're not safe. Blah blah blah. But the people who had them, for the people who had them, in many respects, these were a godsend. It would have been better, of course, if they'd had full-size cars, but that wasn't an option at the time. Anyway, there were many debates about them for years, and what happened was they decided to replace the system with mobility allowance. So basically, you didn't get a car, you got mobility allowance, which I think was about £5 odd in 1976. But in the meantime, a very small number of the last ones got a 650cc version of the stay approach engine, which meant, believe it or not, they could do over 80 miles an hour. And there were, at least I believe, some occasions when drivers of these vehicles were pulled over for breaking the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. And what I say is good luck to them. Anyway, they decided to remove them from the roads by the end of 1981. They weren't actually withdrawn, and there was a Motability scheme was brought in, and it was a huge success. But the result of this was that basically the main manufacturers of trikes who, needed the money from the government, there were lucrative government contracts. Both companies who built the invalid carriages, or the main two companies, didn't long outlive it. There was a fire at the Greaves factory in 1977, and that was the end of it. And AC, with the loss of the revenue and the failure of the new AC 3000 ME car take off, very, very quickly contracted and ceased to produce cars within a few years. It comes to 2003, the government says, right, invalid trikes have to come off the road. And by that time, there was, I think, about 1,500 or so left. The remaining trikes were uplifted and crushed. But some survived, James.
Yeah.
Some did survive, even though they're owned by the state. And they can now be used again in roads. But they have to be re-registered. Ian StreetKA, I believe, has one. And one of, I think, 56 left on the roads. So if you see one of these, it's a very, very rare sight indeed. But bear in mind that it once was a very common sight, and they did perform a useful and very valuable function for a long time. And now that we've finished that, we will take a very quick break. You're listening to Bangers and Classics, the motoring podcast that's a spark plug short of an engine.
Well, welcome everybody back to the next bit of the podcast, the last podcast, apparently. I think you were referring to my career. You said how unexceptional it was, and you said it's nice to see we could buy an unexceptional car, and virtually, of course. And I just wondered what you thought was an unexceptional car, David.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think the idea was to buy a car for the festively unexceptional, and then take it with some chips and ice cream. And I think I may have come up with the wrong car here.
Oh, really?
I think I actually have. For reasons you're about to find out, I went in search of the ideal car for this. It had to be brown, because, brown is obviously a bit of a meh colour. Had to be a car, obviously, to be unexceptional. And for going for chips, ice cream had to be roomy and comfy. So enter into the fray a very, very, very rare car indeed that once wasn't. It's a 1983 Talbot Horizon GLE. There were apparently only 14 Chrysler and Talbot Horizons left on UK roads, with 93 and so on. So it's even beyond the point of being a danger mobile. But the one I found, well, this is a doozy. It is brown, it has steel wheels, it has velour seats, sort of beige sort of colour, where you get extra points for those. And this is the thing, James, it is in spiffing condition.
All right.
It is absolutely superb condition. It was owned by the seller's uncle, who done some work to it. Was off the road, but looking for about probably 3-4 years. I looked at the MOT history, and it wasn't MOT'd between 2017 and 2021, but every other year from 2006 onwards it was. In that history, it failed precisely 2 MOTs in that time, each for one thing. One was the adjustment of the headlights was 2009. It was brake and parking brake efficiency in 2006, and had one advisory for a minor exhaust leak in 2006. And that is it. The complete history, apart from that, in terms of failures and advisories, is clean. And that's pretty darn impressive for a car for a car 39 this year. It comes with the genuine, bona fide, authentic 1442cc Poissy engine, which would normally be accompanied by a knitting needle soundtrack, or the soundtrack of a knitting convention, I should say. Seller says it's not tappety. Now, that I've got to hear. It's not a bad engine. It was venerable at the time, but it did make a bit of a noise. However, the seller says it hasn't. Looking at the condition of the car, and this is in seriously, seriously good condition. He says it's rust-free. It's got a current MOT. It's done 71,000 miles. Curious dashboard that came along in later Horizons, where you had one central, a circular speedometer, surrounded by 4 ancillary gauges, and then on top of the steering wheel, a curious-looking strip rev counter. Bizarre. I didn't know they did that, because we had a Horizon when they came out. My dad had a Horizon. I don't recall it having that. In fact, I'm sure it didn't. However, this has got it, and it is genuine. It's on steel wheels. The steel wheels look brilliant condition as well.
Yeah.
And here's the bit. How much do you think you pay for this, James? For what is probably the best example around, must be, of a very rare car, even if it wasn't massively loved in the day. £4,250.
Goodness me.
Now, there you go. It covers the unexceptional base because of its colour and because of the fact that it wasn't a revered car, even though it was Car of the Year in 1978. It's brown. It's definitely roomy. It's definitely comfy. So when we go for our chips and ice cream, it'll get us there. The engine's not too bad in fuel either. And so what I would say to anyone who's interested in a car of this type, at all remotely interested, is buy it. But if you do buy it, for pity's sake, please look after it, because you'll not get another one like this. And that's it. So what did you get, James?
Well, what I was looking for, strangely enough, was a Kia Pride. Yeah, that's right. There you go. There's an unexceptional car right there. I think it's important not to pay too much money for an unexceptional car, because you'll only be disappointed. But there are none for sale. I couldn't find any in the UK, so obviously I have to shop abroad, as we often do with these challenges. And I found something really interesting. I found a Kia Pride Combi GLXI, and that was in Germany. So being a combi, it's an estate version. So if you thought the little square hatchback was awful, this is even more awful. It's a little brick of a thing. And it's just over 900 euros, so it's nice and cheap, and it does seem to be in quite good condition. The seller, it is actually a dealer selling it, which is quite remarkable, but it's got lots of parking scuffs in it. So even though it's a tiny thing, someone's managed to scuff it all over. But it seems to be very solid. It was registered in 2000. It's done 68,000 kilometres, so it's pretty low mileage. And it looks like quite a sort of unexceptional sort of car. It's got plastic wheel trims. It's a dark colour. It could be brown. My colour blindness kicks in here. It's either a very dark red or a very dark brown. But it's a moody drab colour, which helps, I think. And there you go. So that's where I'll be going this weekend. I'll be popping across the channel to pick up my Kia Pride.
Yes, so there you have it, folks. You only go to the festival unexceptional. You could buy an absolutely stunning, really unexceptional Talbot Horizon, or you could be like James and buy a Kia Pride as a van.
Yeah, it's quite surprising that they haven't invited us, because we're so unexceptional. You know, we'd be doing an unexceptional podcast from there. But
this is an exceptional podcast, but not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people would definitely have some opinion on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not bland mediocrity, let's face it. No. I mean, we aim low and we usually fail to get there, as I keep saying.
Yeah.
Which is great. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Yeah. We'll be back along next week with some more nonsense. Probably think of an even dafter challenge than the Pole Dark. Well, the Pole Dark with Mopeds challenge, I thought was a good one. And I think we've got to do something even dafter than that.
Oh, right.
You know, don't know what it'll be yet, but we'll think of something. But whilst we are doing that, have a good week, everybody. Take care of yourselves. We'll hope to catch you soon.
Yeah, cheerio, everybody.